Hi, my name is Peter Chapman, and I'd like to welcome you to another one of our SKUFood Recipes for Success presented by FCC. It's a real privilege to bring these sessions to you every week. We started back in March when the whole COVID-19 pandemic started, and we've continued right through with the support of Farm Credit Canada, and we're really excited to be able to talk about sales this month in September. We've talked a lot about the challenges that food producers and processors have faced through this whole pandemic, and we really wanted to change it up in September and talk about how to generate sales. And we know we're coming into that critical fourth quarter next, right around the corner, really. And we do have to focus on sales. And for those of you who have been selling through at retail, you know that volume is up, and we know that food service is still continuing to struggle. But even with volume up, we still have to focus on sales, because a lot of companies are starting to change their tactics and change some of their marketing strategies to react to this new environment that we're all working in. So we wanted to talk about how to generate sales in September. So last week we talked about service level and about how important that is to your customers and how you really need to focus on it. And this week we're going to talk about just what's happening in the retail environment and how you need to react and what you can do about it. You can't change the shopping environment, but there are many things that you can do to react to the changes of your customers and to consumers. So we're going to talk about that. And then next week on September 16th, we're going to have Meg Svetkova here from Sampler. And if you've been on some of our previous recipes for success, you might have heard me talk about Sampler. And it's really an option to doing in-store demos. And I know that in-store demos are an important tactic for a lot of food and beverage businesses. And Sampler is an alternative. And there's actually some really interesting opportunities with their program, how it's set up and how it's come about. So we're really excited that Meg is going to be here, and she's going to spend the time with us next week and just explain how it works and some of the results that they've been able to achieve. And I'm really looking forward to it, because I know I will learn as well. So really hope you can join us next week. And I'm sure Susan will put in the chat today the link to register for next week if you're not already registered. And then on September 23rd, we're going to talk about relationships with customers in this new world and how to build them in this virtual space, talk about virtual trade shows. And I'm sure many of you are going to be attending Cial at the end of the month. So we're going to, we actually rejigged our September lineup so that we could get you that session about building relationships virtually and virtual trade shows prior to Cial, so you could take advantage of it. And then on September 30th, we're going to talk about this whole shift to online shopping in food and beverage and what it means to suppliers. And that's really what we focus on in our recipes for success. And what we try to do at SKUFood is take the knowledge that we have of the retail environment, how your customers work, how consumers behave, and really help you build processes and improve your ability to succeed in this really challenging food industry. So that's our September lineup, and we're really excited about all the different things that we've got to share during September to help you get positioned to generate sales in that key fourth quarter timeframe. And as I would say every week, if you have any questions or comments, I really encourage you to put them into the chat box at the bottom. You can use either the chat or the question space there, and I will definitely take a pause and have a look to see and address your questions and comments. And one of the great things about this new way that we interact to share our expertise and information in the sort of the speaking part of my business is that we can get a sense of what you need right then at the time. And it's not, although I certainly miss the opportunity to be out and see everybody face to face, but one of the great things about this is if you have a question or a comment, you can ask it right at the time. We don't have to wait until the end or anything like that. So please, it's meant to be interactive, so make sure that you take advantage of the chat box and put that in there if you have any questions. And one of the great things about our Recipes for Success is our partnership with FCC, and really excited to work with FCC. And they're the only Canadian lender that's 100% invested in Canadian agriculture and food. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with FCC with their background in agriculture, but they really do support the entire value chain in the food industry, right from small producers and processors right up to large multinational people exporting, they work with wholesalers, distributors, packaging companies, the entire value chain in the food industry. And that's a big advantage that they have, where they do understand all of that. And they work with small artisanal producers right up to large multinationals who are exporting. So I'd really encourage you, if you have any needs in that financing area, that really try to understand the expertise that FCC can bring to your business, and help you through that, and really position you for a strong future within your food and beverage business. So let's talk about how you can succeed in this new environment that we're working on. And it's really a challenge, but there are some opportunities too. And one thing I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about, we'll talk about the shopping environment and how it's changed, but the reality is you can't impact that. And we see lots of things happening about the retail environment changing, and that is true, and we have to adapt to it, but you can't change it so much, you have to adapt to it. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, but then we're going to talk about consumer behavior, and we're going to talk about consumer behavior in the stores and how you as a supplier, a producer, a processor can react and be more successful given the new environment that we're working in. We're also going to talk about how you can resonate, and we have done a lot of work on telling your story, and that is so important right now. So we're going to give you some examples and show you how some people are doing that. We're also going to talk about acknowledging the current situation, and that's one of the most effective tools when you're trying to appeal to consumers, is really to acknowledge the situation they're in. And right now we're right in the first week of back to school in many parts of Canada. So we're going to talk a little bit about some suppliers who have acknowledged that and really resonate with the consumer. So it's so important to be able to do that. And then the last part about generating sales is you've also got to be doing the functional things, the basics of execution for a food and beverage producer and processor. So we're going to just talk about those, and you might have heard me talk about some of them before, but we're going to just run through them again, because if you're going to generate sales during these key time periods, you really need to make sure that you're on the basics in your food and beverage business. So let's talk about that shopping environment. And I'm sure you've all been out in the stores. We're not in the stores as much as we used to be, but I'm sure you've been out and you see what's going on. And for me, it's really so much about the messaging. And this was just in a Walmart store last week. And who would have thought 6 months ago that you would be in a food store and we'd have signage all over the place that says, stop, don't go in if you feel sick, don't go in if this, don't go in if that. I mean, that's unheard of, right? So that's really changed the environment, and it almost sets the tone for the consumer. If you remember what a store was like prior to 6 months ago, you'd walk in and you'd smell bakery and you might see some exciting deals or something like that. But now you're met with these signs that just say, stop, do not enter, don't go down this aisle the wrong way, that kind of thing. And I find this picture, when I took it, I was really more focused on sort of the aisle direction sign, because we know that we see that, and with the public health regulations, we're trying to encourage consumers all to shop the aisles the same way. But the reason I wanted to share it with you today was I want you to look at it and see that that's the sign that's taking precedent. And even in a Walmart store, the sign to the right about pricing and matching ads and everything is taking, I'll almost say, a back seat to the signage about physical distancing and keeping consumers and employees safe in that retail shopping environment. So it's really about how the messaging has changed and the impact that it has on consumers. We've also seen the shift from food service to retail. And we know that retail sales continue to be at much heightened levels that we probably never would have predicted right now. And at this time of year, we see food service items moving into retail, and just a lot of change happening within that environment. And it's something that you, again, as I said at the outset, that you can't change it, but you do have to react to it. And this was interesting, which I was on watching a webinar that was a partnership between Nielsen and FCC. And we can see that according to Nielsen, that there's been such a shift in the marketplace where conventional food stores are really gaining share over the discount channel. And that was up to the end of June. And my understanding is a lot of that has continued. And one of the biggest reasons is because consumers want to get that full shop. They feel that if they go to a discount store, they may not be able to get everything. They don't want to go to 2 stores. So they're going to the one store where they feel they're going to have the best chance of getting all the items that are on their list. So you need to think about that in your business. So are you positioned to be in the conventional stores where the best service level is, where the consumers have the best confidence of getting everything they want? Or are you in some stores where they're maybe not patronizing as much, or perhaps the service level in that retailer is not as good and it's going to drag everybody down? So you need to consider that. And then, as we've talked as well, we know some of the priorities are shifting within the retailers, that they're more focused on getting stock, they're more focused on operating safe stores for employees and consumers, and perhaps the importance of getting that absolute lowest price might have diminished a little bit. And I'm not trying to say price is unimportant. I think price is still very important to your customers, but we just see that there are shifts in priority. So again, these are all things that are happening out there in the market that you really don't have a lot of impact in terms of being able to change it. But what you can change is what's happening in your business. So let's talk about some of the things that you can change in your business to respond to this changing consumer. So the first thing is you have to keep focused on your target market. And we talked a lot about, the importance of having a good definition of your target market, because when you start to look at changes in consumer behavior, we know consumers are changing an awful lot right now, very quickly. You need to know who is most likely to buy your product. So make sure that as you consider the changes, who your target market is. So that's really where you got to start. You got to pull out that target market definition, think about it, think about, okay, who am I really most likely to sell my products to in the store? And then consider some of the things happening. And I thought this was interesting from Food Business News, where we see that 8 in 10, so 80% of consumers changed their eating habits during COVID-19. So are you really thinking about that from the perspective of your product? So is your product something that perhaps people are more likely to be wanting right now? Is it something that's less? And where do you fit on that continuum? And are you giving them ideas, opportunities to use your product in their new situation, not when it was prior to March, but in their new situation? That's really important, is to be giving them ideas and opportunities. So if you're developing recipes, perhaps they should be changing from what they were prior to last March. We also know that so many more people are working from home, and that really does have a profound impact on how people shop for food. So they're eating lunch at home, they might not be eating out. So are you giving them suggestions, ideas? We know that eating at home can be very good for a lot of people selling product in food stores, because that volume might have gone to food service in the past. But people get bored of the same old thing all the time. So are you giving them ideas? Are you helping them with that sort of creativity that says, when you're eating lunch at your home office, and give them, plant the seeds, say, sort of paint that picture of them sitting at their desk at home, and this is a great lunch. Or perhaps it's like you had it for supper last night, now you can have it as leftovers the next day. There's so many different ways that you can position it, but think about that consumer, if they're in your target market, who's now working from home. And I understand from talking to different people that we could see this situation continue through 2021, that people in some of the large, the banks and some of the larger corporate environments, where people are saying, we don't need people back at our office until it is 100% safe. So we could see another year of this sort of amount of people working at home, and perhaps it will continue even after that. So really think about how you can position your products for that. And we've talked about online shopping in food in Canada being probably 5 times higher than it was prior to the pandemic. So 12 to 15% of all food and beverage in Canada is now purchased online. So where are you at there? Are you in the space where your consumers can find it easily? And a lot of this is through the major retailers, no doubt about it. We've got Loblaw with Click and Collect, Walmart Click and Collect, Sobeys have launched their Voila program with a dedicated warehouse in Ontario for picking orders. IGA in Quebec's been on online shopping for a long time. Metro, same thing. Save on Foods out west. But those are the big players. But there's also a big shift in consumers buying direct. So what is your e-commerce profile? Are you set up to be able to ship and service customers, consumers who want to buy product direct from you online? So that's another big shift in consumer behavior, because you may be missing out on a whole group of consumers if you're not available to them online. And now we're seeing where it's 1 in 10, 1 in 8 consumers, which is a big part of the market. And depending on your target market, it could be even more. It could be 20%, 25%. So those are big numbers in the market that you really need to be aware of. We know people are eating more meals at home. We know that they're sitting around the table having more meals. So again, are you giving them suggestions? Are you planting that seed for your products to be a part of those meals that they're eating at home? And I don't know, some of these headlines, now this is obviously from the US, so you have to kind of take that to start, but we see that people are saying, is it time for grocery stores to ban customers from coming inside? So, we know in a number of retailers in the US where they're struggling much more with the whole pandemic, some retailers have closed stores to be able to service only online orders. So that has a big impact on how you need to go to market, and that's something to watch. And I don't think it's something that we're going to see here in Canada in the near future. We definitely know that there's more online, but I don't believe that we're going to see it quite as drastic, but it's something that consumers see. And the reason that I wanted to share it with you today is more about the fact that they want to get in and out of these stores quickly. And you can see there's other, again, this is media from the US, but how to safely shop for groceries due to the pandemic. So there are a lot of different messages going out there to consumers. So are your products responding to that? Are your products, when they see the packaging, when they see the message that you're sharing with them, are you easy to find in the store, that kind of thing? Because people are not shopping like they used to. They really are more trying to get in and get out. And one of the things that you can really do is try to increase that level of awareness. And so this is an example. We've talked about influencers before, where a Nova Scotia actually produce company is working with some different influencers to try to get their products and increase that awareness and give people in their target market some ideas for use, and really get people trying to think about the products before they go to that store environment. In the past, we would have always tried to focus on the 35,000 consumers going through the store every week, but that's changed. So you need to be focusing on creating that level of awareness and driving demand before they even get to the store. And that means getting on the list. And I find it interesting now, if you see people in the store, I would say that half the people might be shopping with a list that's written out on a piece of paper, and the other half are shopping with a list they've created on their phone. So are you in that electronic medium where it's easy to add you to a grocery list? Can you help people build a grocery list on their phone? And I think we're going to start to see soon, and perhaps it's out there and I haven't found it yet, but we know we have the artificial intelligence on the retailers' websites for e-commerce, because they'll say, here's what you bought last week, or here's some frequently purchased items, that kind of thing. But I think we're going to see it also in terms of apps. And if anybody's seen one out there, then I'd be really interested to learn about it, because I think that the dependence we have on our mobile devices is huge. We know people spend a huge amount of time on it, even more since March. So how can we create grocery lists easily on there with items that we buy and items that we frequently buy? Because once you get on that list, then you're much more likely to get into that shopping cart. So those are some of the different things with regards to consumer behavior that I really think you need to focus on if you want to generate sales in the next upcoming time. So if anybody's got any questions about any of those sort of points that I was making in terms of that, how consumer behavior is changing and working from home and more meals at home, then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about that. And also, if you do know about any of those sort of artificial intelligence shopping list things on mobile, I'd be really interested to learn about that. So if anybody's seen anything, then it'd be great to learn about it. So we're going to keep going, because we really are focused on delivering content to you, and that's such an important piece of what we do in our recipes for success, which are presented by FCC. So let's talk about how you can resonate. And one of the big things to me is that you can talk about your employees. And this is a great time to talk about the people who are bringing food to Canadians. And it's important to acknowledge your staff. And this is an example of a social media post from Fancy Pocket, which is a bakery company in Moncton, New Brunswick, just saying thanks to their employees. And there's lots of other examples out there, but it's a great time to feature some of your people. And you can build relationships with customers and consumers if you feature some of your people. And I really think it's a great opportunity to really resonate with people during these challenging times. And another thing that you really can try to focus on is product origin. And if we'd had the conversation 6 months ago, I would have probably argued with you and said, you got to focus on some of the other attributes of your product. But the reality is consumers have changed, and they really are looking for more product of Canada and even local products. So here's an example of the Taste of Nova Scotia campaign here in Nova Scotia, where I live, where they're highlighting products in stores. So those English cucumbers are local, and it's a really, an in-store POS campaign where people make the decision to buy. And I think that if you look at those cucumbers, and if you can imagine what that display would be like without the local signs, I think that it wouldn't get near the attention. And now that that's such a heightened thing for people, they want to know where their food comes from and they want to understand more about it, that it's important to be able to take advantage of some of that POS that's out there. So I do see a question there, and the question is about any predictions should we end up in another lockdown. Well, I wish I knew the answer to that. But what I would say, though, is that I think that given the reports that we see in the media right now, especially in different parts of Canada where we're seeing the number of cases increasing by 25–30% relative to where we had been in August, I think consumers are going to behave differently again. And I do believe that we need to prepare, and hopefully we can be better prepared for probably another little, maybe not to the extent that we had in March, the stockpiling and the hoarding of food. And of course there's the toilet paper example. Hopefully we won't go through that again. But I do believe that as suppliers, we should be talking to our customers about, are you expecting more of a stockpile again as we go into especially holidays like Thanksgiving and then as we get into the Christmas season. So I would really recommend talking to your customers, asking them, do they see an anticipated level of demand? It certainly doesn't look like we're going to be in any different position between now and the end of 2020. So can we have a conversation about expectations between sort of September and December to try and make sure that inventory, and that's the biggest key. And I think when somebody says, are there preventative measures that you can take now, which is a question there, is really the inventory. Inventory is the big thing in all this. That's the biggest challenge. And we talked last week a lot about going through and looking at all the components of your business to have service level. But I think it's also a great time right now to talk to your customers about upcoming weeks and just say, do we, what are you looking for? What are you expecting? So those would be some things that I would do. I don't know whether we're going to have this second wave, and it's even regional across the country, how the whole pandemic is impacting us. So really, it's important to understand in your specific markets what's going on out there. I don't believe we'll see too many more changes in the retail environment. I think those have all been made, in terms of sort of shopping which way in the aisle and the physical changes at the checkout with the plexiglass and some of those kind of things. So it'll be more about consumers spending time in stores. If the cases go up again, then we'll probably see less time in stores, less food service again, so more at retail again, those kind of things happening. So here's another example of local, and by the way, thanks for your question, really appreciate it. Here's another example of local signage, and for me, you have to remember that as a supplier, it's your responsibility. If these programs are out there to be participating, getting out to see what's going on? Are they, executing, putting the right signs on the right items? Because you have to make people aware. So if execution is not 100%, then you got to let people know and be there, because this is a critical time to take advantage of it. Here's another example. Now the previous one I believe was in a Sobeys store. This is in a Loblaw store. So one of the reasons for showing you this one is if you do pack control label, private label, you can see where Loblaw are highlighting on their farmers market product that it's growers near you. So they're trying to, even though it's a common label across Canada, they're highlighting the fact that the product was grown in a location near you. So again, if you're producing those products and selling it to them, then you can take advantage of those programs. And another great way to really resonate is to collaborate. And this is an example of somebody who works as an influencer, and she worked with a number of different companies to put together backpacks to help children going back to school who are in need. So by working with the person who's the influencer, the individual food and beverage companies probably didn't have to do as much work as the influencer, because she coordinated the entire effort and was able to bring together enough products that were, I believe, donated to put together close to 300 backpacks for children going back to school. And then part of what she will do is share that with her community and make sure that she gives credit to the companies who participated. So there's different opportunities to resonate, and in-store with signage is one, but you have to remember that people are not shopping like they used to. So that's important, but you also want to try to look for other opportunities like this one here on collaboration, where you can work with some other people to get the word out and increase that awareness, really. So as far as acknowledgement, and when I say acknowledgement, I think it's important to say to consumers, listen, we understand life is different for you right now. Things have changed a lot. And that's how you will get them to take notice of your products and really put you on their list before they go to the store or before they do their online order. So here's an example of something from on Instagram, where Twizzlers we're doing a promo with Cottage Country in Ontario. And one of the reasons that I wanted to share this one was that you can see that it says there, gummies, Twizzlers, new Twizzlers, gummies, check out to kick off your long weekend, untwist from it all. Social distancing measures will be in place to ensure everyone's safety. And so acknowledge that's the reality of the situation that we're in, and that consumers should expect that when they get to this pop-up Twizzler experience, that they will have to wait in line and people will be lined up 6 feet apart. So they'll feel comfortable going and taking advantage of whatever you're doing in this new environment that we're all trying to generate sales in. Another thing to think about is it's back to school time. And for a lot of students in Canada, they've been at home for 6 months. So this back to school time was stressful. So there's been a lot in the media about what to pack for back to school lunches. So it's an opportunity for people in the food industry to get maybe some free public relations. You could talk to the local, media, mass media in your area and see if they're interested in some information, some insights, some tips, that kind of thing. So that's an opportunity for you. And then then you increase that awareness and get people thinking about your products before they go to the store, before they make their list. And here's an example of a company made with local who produce a number of different energy bars and granola products. And so this is from their website. So this is them taking the initiative, putting some information out as a blog. And I'm sure that they posted it all on Instagram and to their Facebook followers, and they probably have an email list that they would have communicated this to. And so it's how to do, what to do for a back to school lunch and try to help parents. And I would say it's probably a great example of somebody looking at their target market and saying their target market has a lot of families with children. So they're going back to school. It's a stressful time. So it's tough. It's tough enough in a regular year, but then you layer on top all of the sort of the stresses of the pandemic. So they're just trying to say, you know what, school lunches, we've got some ideas for you. We've got some options for you. So So they're giving you some ideas, and by the way, they'll probably want you to use their product, but that's a good thing, right? And then they give you another one on about litterless lunchboxes. So they're generating content that will help consumers make that decision to put their product on the list, or in their case, they also have a robust e-commerce site. So they have a special back to school bundle. So they have their bar mix, which you can get a bundle of it and with a special price on it. So for consumers, they're giving you ideas about lunches, which is a stressful thing if you have children and there's enough stress with getting masks and hand sanitizer and all those things you need to go back to school this year. And so they're saying, hey, here's some ideas for lunch. And by the way, if you want to buy our granola bar mix packets, here's a way that you can do it without having to ever leave your home. And there's nothing wrong with generating those sales from some of those good ideas. And you have to communicate that to your target market through blogs, through social media, through your email list, all those kind of things, which are so important for you to have that communication with the people who are most likely to buy your products. And I know you've heard me talk about Smack Dab before, and I wanted to share one that I saw. This was posted on LinkedIn. So Carly from Smack Dab has put together a whole back to school meal prep for the family. So again, it's trying to reduce the stress because there's a lot going on with back to school, and some people are back perhaps to work different ways and that kind of thing. So she's giving you a whole meal prep idea. And I'm just going to show you a few of the pages. I mean, there's more, but I just want to show you a few of them that she would have shared. And of course, it features mustard, but that's her product, so fair enough, right? So she gives you an entire shopping list so you can see all the different items that you can add to your list. So again, here's where you need to be on that list. And if you know some people that are complementary items, then why not collaborate with them and put them on your list and ask them to put you on their list. So when somebody puts a shopping list out there like this, perhaps there could even be some specific products or brands that would go great with each other. And again, you're giving consumers that idea and reducing the stress for them. And then she's giving you some ideas to help with the prep for the week so that it's, you know, that sort of reduce the stress idea. And then there's some great recipes for different products. And of course, you would be featuring Smack Dab mustard. And I noticed I kind of smiled when I saw the top photo there, because actually we've made that recipe here, the maple mustard salmon on a cedar plank, and it's a great recipe. It's not a hard one, but it tastes great. There's a little bit of rosemary crumbled on top, and it's a fantastic meal for a family if you all like salmon. So those are some ideas of opportunities where you're acknowledging where the consumer is at right now, and then you're shifting them into some ways to use your product, and ultimately that will generate sales. And we have to remember that we got to stay focused on that. And it's been a challenge to get product produced, to get labor, to get ingredients and all those things, but you do have to keep focused on the sales and remember to keep generating those ideas that are going to deliver sales. So I'm just going to take a break for a second and see if anybody's got any questions about any of the ideas that we've talked about. Perhaps you've got some suggestions that you'd like to share with the rest of the group. And it's great, our Recipes for Success presented by FCC. We get people from across the country joining us each week, and really appreciate people being here, because I know they're busy, but we do appreciate you being here and participating. And so if you have any ideas to share, we're always open to that as well. Look forward to it. And the fourth area that I wanted to talk about today is just about that functionality piece. And these are the not so exciting things, especially if you work on the sales and marketing side of your business. You got to get product produced. You've got to have a sales and marketing program that's been geared to this new environment, and you really should be looking at things like, where are you spending your marketing dollars? Are you spending them in the store, which might not be as effective as it used to be? So perhaps you should be shifting some of those expenses from the store to before they get to the store, that kind of thing. But there's also the nuts and bolts, kind of the basics of your product flowing through the system. And I'd really encourage you to have somebody in your business focused on this, especially in the next 4 months where sales are key. So I'm not going to go into all the details of service level. Hopefully you were with us last week and we're able to learn and see all the different components of generating that great over 97% service level that we all should be striving for. If you didn't, then you can always send me an email, peter@skufood.com. And we did share the link last week with the people who are on our SKUFood list as an opportunity, because I know a lot of people were away and it's a busy time for people trying to get their summer vacation in, which I respect 100%. So if you did miss it, we can certainly send you the link, and the whole purpose of us doing these is so that people get access to it. So just let me know. So service level, striving for that 97% number. 100 is really the ultimate. The next thing is your product flowing through the warehouse properly? And you can only understand that by going to the store. So if you have delivered your product on time, in full, proper paperwork, all those kind of things, then you need to go to the store and understand your service level at the shelf. Because if there's a gap, if you're delivering it to the warehouse, but it's not getting to the shelf, then you really need to talk to your customer and say, is there something going on that is not, correct? Or is there something preventing us from getting our inventory to the shelf? And you really need to be checking stores right now to make sure that your product is flowing through the warehouse. And it could be simple as the product is not listed correctly in the system. There's something wrong with the barcode or the labeling on your master carton. There's all kinds of things that can happen. It could have got put in the wrong slot in the warehouse. Trust me, I've seen it all. And actually, I was on a call with a retailer today where they were looking for the supplier to do a little bit of DSD delivery because they weren't confident the product was going to flow through the warehouse properly. And everybody has challenges right now. So play the role with your customer and see if the product is flowing through the warehouse properly. And if not, ask the question and see what's going on. The next thing is you should be striving for 0 rejections. And the rejections can happen for all kinds of different reasons. And I blocked out to keep the names out of it. But the reality is you just can't have product rejected right now. It's such a challenging time for everybody to operate in business. And it's even tougher now than it was before. And one of the reasons I wanted to put this up on the screen for you was so that you can understand how many people within a retailer's organization get a note when something is rejected. So you don't want your product on there. You don't want to have everybody looking at it and go, oh, such and such a supplier had a rejection or another rejection or whatever it is. So make sure that you are doing the double checks on your product before it goes out. Make sure that what you're delivering to your customers is what it's supposed to be. And it's not just food quality issue. It can be code dating, it can be proper labeling. I know we've had a lot of recalls lately on some hand sanitizers and different things. So there are a lot of different issues that can impact a rejection. So make sure that you're striving to be rejection free. The next thing is once it gets to the shelf, consumers have to have enough time to use your product, and that means proper code dates. So make sure that you're checking code dates on all the lots that are going out from your facility. And we know consumers are checking code dates all the time. And you don't want to have your product left on the shelf because they're checking code dates. So if you want to maximize the sales during these key selling periods, then you really got to make sure that consumers have enough time and feel confident in your product and that the code dates are long enough for them to be able to enjoy it. And then the last part is that it scans properly. And I find it interesting when you see photos now that probably were done pre-COVID-19, because whatever little piece of plexiglass is in that photo is not going to protect anybody. So I find it interesting, but that's beside the point. The point is that your products need to scan properly. So are your UPC codes listed correctly with the retailers? And are they easy to scan when the cashier goes through to scan them? And we see more and more self-scanning lanes now, which means consumers are scanning the product themselves. So just go through, you can buy your products in store, test them, make sure that everything is working properly, because there's nothing that will get you shifted to the side quicker than if your product doesn't go through the front end right, because the mindset of your customers right now is, look, we don't have time for that stuff. So you need to make sure that you've got the basics of service level through the warehouse, no rejections, good code dates, and it scans properly. And when you can check off those 5 boxes in your business, then you have such a better chance of generating the sales that you really, that are out there for you to get. And also it helps building that relationship with your customer, because as we always would tell you, that when your product gets into the shopping cart, that's what keeps you on the shelf and creates more and more opportunities for your business with your retail customers. So really think about those 5 things. Think about assigning perhaps somebody in your business to look at those things. And it's not just a delivery to the warehouse. Your job is not done until it scans through that front end and the consumer takes it home and really almost generates the need to want to buy the product again. But your job is not done when it gets to the warehouse. Your job is done when it moves through the entire system and the consumer's happy with the product that they purchased. So we spent a lot of time today talking about how you as a supplier can react to these changes in the retail environment, to what's really going on out there to help you generate more sales. And again, you can't change that retail environment. That's not, the retailers are operating their stores based on the expectations of public health, and it's different in every province, and so they're adapting and making sure, and it does keep evolving too. There's no doubt. I mean, in this part of the country, masks are mandatory in stores, and I noticed in a couple other provinces this was starting to be added. So then the retailers have to change signage and implement those kind of things, but you can't change that shopping environment. What you do need to do is think about the consumer behavior and what's changing and how it impacts, and go back to that target market. Think about your target market first, and then look at all those different factors of consumer behavior. What's going on with those people who are most likely to buy your products? And are you doing things in your marketing and sales and promotion programs that are going to resonate with people in this new environment? Are you acknowledging where they're at? That back to school is even more stressful this year, or that we want to eat together as families, and different, using the terminology. There's even, sort of new terminology coming out as a result of the whole pandemic. Things like bubbles, which we kind of didn't think of reacting before, or living in a bubble, but those are the kind of terminology. And I even hear the kids talk about it, that who's in so-and-so's bubble and that kind of thing. So use the language that people understand right now, and that will demonstrate to them that you understand the challenges that they're in. So make sure you do that, and then focus on that functionality. Make sure that your products are going through the system properly, and check off those 5 things that we covered, which are so important. So I'd really encourage you, again, assign somebody in your business to really focus on those things, because they're really not about making great products. And that's where so much of your focus is, and that's understandable. But I'm sure you've heard me say before that success in this food industry is not just about making great products to sell. It's about selling the great products you make. And that includes getting it to the warehouse, that includes getting through the warehouse, proper code dates, no rejections, and scanning properly. Those are some of the components of selling the great products that you make. So focus on those things in your business, and you'll have a much greater chance of generating those sales in this new environment that we're all trying to work within. And as we end every week, it's a different environment. Things are changing. We'd like to try to focus on some positive stories that we see out there. And the first one that I was able to see this week is that Loblaw, through their home delivery program, are now working with, I guess they've expanded their PC Chef program and their direct-to-home delivery. Now, this only works if you're in the Greater Toronto area, not outside. But what they're doing is working with a number of restaurants to deliver meal kits from the restaurants to consumers' homes. So it's kind of an interesting collaboration between retail and food service. So there are a number of restaurants, Burgers Priest, La Carnita, Fresh Restaurants, Fat Lamb Cuisina, General Assembly Pizza, Kinton, Ramanan, Sala, Modern Thai, all these things you can get a next day delivery at home with a meal kit. So kind of an interesting collaboration there, and interesting to see Loblaw doing that within the that GTA marketplace. And I see there's a question there from Crystal about how do we think the strike in Dominion in Newfoundland will have an impact. So it's interesting, that story, because I actually had to look a little bit hard to find that on the news. And I live in Halifax, and I would have expected that I would see some news reporting about the Dominion stores in Newfoundland being on strike. And just to give a little background story for people in the rest of Canada, the Loblaw stores in Newfoundland are branded, the format they use is called Dominion stores, which many of us were familiar with back in the 70s across Canada. Dominion was obviously a major force, but as the stores were sold off and moved in to different banners, but the Dominion format was kept in Newfoundland. And I believe Loblaw have about 18 Dominion stores across Newfoundland and Labrador. So the Dominion stores, it is a separate labor contract with those stores, and I believe the stores have been on strike now for a week or two, and it definitely will have an impact. I think it's such unfortunate timing for a retailer to be dealing with the labor issues, and unfortunate timing for everybody, because a labor disruption is a challenge for the employees, and it's also a challenge for the retailer. I think that in a time when consumers across Newfoundland have had so many changes to their shopping environment already, now if you shopped at Dominion, which probably would have been 20-30% of the marketplace, now you've got to find a new store to shop at, and you've got to either learn how to, the aisles and where everything is laid out at Sobeys or Walmart or Coleman's or some of the independent stores in Newfoundland. So it's definitely going to have an impact on consumers. It's unfortunate for them to have to learn a new shopping environment right now. It's probably, I don't know, I don't understand sort of the actual details in terms of, and it's always hard to predict, is this going to be a long labor disruption, or is it going to be something that can be resolved relatively quickly? But there's no doubt that it's always a challenge when these kind of things happen. So the other retailers, if you supply Sobeys, Walmart, Coleman's, you really should be talking to your customers there about volume, like, how much of an increase are they seeing because of the Dominion stores being closed? So that's another layer of complexity if you service the Newfoundland marketplace, because those stores' volume would have changed because of COVID-19, and now it's changed again because of the Dominion stores closing. So that's another layer of complexity. So I would really be watching my orders carefully there and talking to your retail partners if you're in that market. And if you're selling direct in Newfoundland and Labrador, then again, you may be seeing another increase or something because the Dominion stores being closed. So I think the biggest thing I would say, Crystal, is the impact on sort of that percent of the market, really effectively being closed and doing zero volume, and having to shift that volume around to other retailers is probably the biggest layer of complexity that it will bring. And then depending on if they can get things agreed upon with a contract to move forward, then it will be how to get consumers back into those stores and try to get them geared up again. So, but it's always a tough situation when that happens. And I can actually remember when I worked at Loblaw, we had a labor disruption in Dominion stores, and I think when we went back, we actually had bananas for like 19 cents a pound or something crazy. I remember shipping full loads of bananas over to the warehouse, and as a loss leader, to try to get consumers to come back to the stores and resume sort of their previous shopping habits. But it always disrupts the market, and inventory is a big thing. I see we've got another question here. Let me just have a look. Should suppliers weigh in on labor disruptions? So that's an interesting question. What should you say if asked by the media, consumers to comment? I really think that that's not something that suppliers want to get in the middle of. It's a very challenging relationship between labor and retailers, because everybody wants to be paid more, everybody wants more hours, which is understandable to have those desires, and retailers are trying to work in an environment where their bottom line is not big, so they're trying to manage their costs. So my advice would be no, you don't want to get in the middle of that. I think that the only sort of reaction a supplier should have is really when you're talking, if you supply Loblaw, you want to understand when they're going to need inventory again, and the better, more heads up they can give you, especially servicing a market like Newfoundland and Labrador, which has its complexities with getting product to the island and that kind of thing, distances and lead times. And then the same with your other customers. If you service the Walmart and Sobeys or Coleman's chains, then I think you want to be talking inventory, and that's your best position. And it's really, I don't think you'll ever win trying to sort of have comments about that within the media. It's tough, and unless you're really at the negotiating table, you also aren't privy to all of the information at the time. So I think it's good advice to just let them comment about the situation. So another good news story that we were able to find this week was about, which comes from the Grocery Foundation of Canada. And it was their Back to School 2020 program called Toonies for Tummies. So this is a number of the retailers, excuse me, from across Canada, Metro, Longo's, Sobeys, all participate in the Grocery Foundation. And they work together, and customers donate Toonies at the front end. And this year they were able to raise about $2.5 million to help hungry children in Canada. And one of the statistics that I did read about in some of the media releases was the fact that a lot of experts expect that double the amount of children will be going to school hungry in Canada this year because of the pandemic, that either their parents have challenging job situations and aren't earning the amount of money they were this time last year, or perhaps could have lost their job, and they don't have enough money to buy the right amount of food that we need to feed children. So it's definitely a great initiative on behalf of the retailers and working with their customers in store to generate $2.5 million this year for children going back to school, which is really great, and something that people should be proud of for being a part of it. And then finally, I wanted to share about Nature's Path, who have donated a number of they call it Eat Well, Do Good food campaign, which is again to address childhood hunger and food insecurity. And they are working with food banks across the US and Canada, and they've donated 1 million bowls, or 250,000 boxes of their nutritious and organic breakfast cereal, granola, and snacks. And they've distributed them to food banks in 10 different markets across the US and Canada. You can see some of their products there. Love Crunch is a product that actually does come into our house here. I know in our online grocery order, I see it there. So congratulations to them, and for being a part of trying to reduce some of the stress for parents during this back to school time, and trying to provide food to children who need it. So 1 million different occasions, it's a lot across North America. So congratulations to Nature's Path for their initiative there. And with that, I'd love to invite you to join us next week. And I mentioned earlier that we have Meg Svetkova from Sampler with us, and Meg is going to explain some of the really interesting components of Sampler, which is an online platform where consumers can go and create their profile, and then CPG companies can try to address their target market and provide samples exactly to the target market. And I'm sure we'll learn from Meg how it's a much more effective platform than just sort of doing it to everybody and anybody who's hungry or thirsty. So she's going to explain how the program works and share some of the results. And also they have a new e-commerce platform which they've launched, and I'm sure that we'll hear some more about that from Meg as well. And if we have any more questions or comments, I'll just take a look here and see. I see Susan posted the registration again, so thank you for doing that, Susan. So if you're interested in next week or the week after, where we're going to talk about relationships, virtual, trade shows and that kind of thing, or online shopping at the end of the month. And the online shopping session is going to be focused on what suppliers should do, not the fact that we have 12 or 15% of the market. That's the reality of the situation. We're going to talk about what suppliers, what you need to be doing in that online space, and how you can increase sales and work more effectively with your customers, or do it direct. So we really want to say thank you for being here on our SKUFood Recipes for Success presented by FCC. It's a privilege to share insights and information with you every week, and really look forward to seeing you next week, when we're going to really have a great session on sampling and how to be successful with sampling in this new COVID-19 era that we're all working in with. So thanks for being here, and any questions or comments, again, it's peter@skufood.com. Just send me an email, and be happy to touch base with you. So thanks for being here, and we'll see you next week.